Well, technology ceases to be technology once you adapt to it. Then it becomes biology.
Hello and welcome to insightsxchange, a podcast that explores the ideas, people, and innovations shaping the world of research and academia. I'm your host, Nikesh Gosalia, and today we are honored to be joined by one of India's most respected academic leaders, Professor Debashish Chatterjee, Director of IIM Kozhikode. Professor Chatterjee is a globally renowned educator, author, and leadership coach. Over the past 3 decades, he has taught at prestigious institutions including Harvard and multiple IIMs. He's the longest-serving director of a first-generation IIM and is widely credited with transforming IIM Kozhikode into one of India's top global B schools. He has also undergone advanced leadership coaching training at INSEAD, France. In this conversation, we explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping the very fabric of educational institutions, from pedagogy and research to leadership and ethics. And who better to reflect on this than someone who bridges ancient wisdom with cutting-edge strategy? Professor Chatterjee, welcome to insightsxchange. It is truly a privilege to have you with us.
Thank you, Nikesh. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you. So let me start with your leadership. You've taken the institute through a phase of extraordinary transformation. How do you now view the role of emerging technologies, especially AI, in the next chapter of institutional evolution?
Well, technology ceases to be technology once you adapt to it. Then it becomes biology. So the usual suspects that we thought were technology are not really in that sense technology, but AI is a different beast because it's not just a tool, it's a co-evolutionary force that is shaping not just how institutions think, teach, and engage, but also shaping how knowledge can be democratized, reducing access asymmetries, and we are evolving from a knowledge delivery hub to an intelligent ecosystem. So our institutions have become less of schools and more of hubs, where AI is playing a very key role. And so the future, indeed, in this education space belongs to adaptive learning institutions. So it's not being AI savvy, it's being adaptive. AI savviness is what you can't, the technology is changing overnight. And so how much more savvy can you be? The whole locus of attention should be on how do you adapt as a learning institution. You don't become learned anymore. You don't remain static. So AI is central to this transformation that we are sensing is going to happen. It's going to take away some very critical skills. My grandmother never went to school. She could recite the entire Mahabharata. Those skills will be lost. And there'll be many other skills that will be lost. But then that's the way humans have decided to evolve. And we do not know what the future holds. I'm not a technology expert. All I can see is that you don't adapt, you perish. And that's going to be the story going forward.
Brilliant. No, I'm already loving this, Professor Chatterjee. I think some of the nuggets, some of the gems that you're using, I think we are definitely going to reflect a little bit more on that. You often speak of future readiness, a term that's gaining traction but is rarely defined clearly. From your perspective, how would you define future readiness in the context of higher education, particularly in this AI-infused age, if I may say so?
You see, the future has already happened, except that it is unevenly distributed among its constituencies. So future readiness actually means the ability to anticipate, adapt, and align intellectually and emotionally with rapid change. Because, the conflict is not just structural between what is and what could be. It is also emotional. What is and what I cannot grasp totally with my cognitive apparatus, my brain. So it is not just about tech adoption, but also cultivating resilience, ethical grounding, and learning agility. And institutions must prepare students for coexistence with these intelligent systems, not compete against them. Because if you look at technology as the core, future readiness means refining our definitions of success, not in terms of degrees conferred, but in terms of capabilities acquired and expanded. I'll give you an example. in one of the universities in New Zealand, I think Christchurch, they put up a whole course run by AI. There are no professors. Students took a few classes and then they demanded their fees back. They said, why would we pay for an institution where AI is teaching the whole course? So it simply means that, the future readiness would not mean more of technology. It means more of understanding how the human natural intelligence responds to artificial intelligence. Because you have to understand artificial intelligence is, after all, created by natural intelligence. We're not talking about natural stupidity. We're talking about natural intelligence. And so natural intelligence will predominate sooner or later. It will find a way to arrive at an exquisite synthesis, if you will. That could be the word between biology and technology and so forth. And what would be that point, price performance point? We have to decide based on what we see unfolding. As of now, technology divides people very, very clearly. Some people are adapting to it quickly, others are reluctant. So there is a tussle, and we are going through this churning right now.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of questions that just based on your response that popped in my mind, Professor, before I move to very specific area of academic research. Where do you think India is currently in this whole, AI journey? Are we, you believe we are doing enough? Or do you think, we can, obviously there's always an opportunity to do more, but just, if you have a macro perspective on it.
Well, India is, I can tell you, of the world cultures, India is the most curious lot. So I think the rate of adoption and adaptive capability is very high here. Contrary to, and just the sheer numbers, if you look at 1.5 billion people, there always going to be technological savviness in a large mass. So if you look at the sheer numbers, adaptation will be of a larger scale here than anywhere else. So contrary to what most people believe, that, pan-Europe or pan-American adaptation of technology is lower than India. Just a few cities do not determine America or England or France. But if India, you see a coconut grower or a fish merchant in a small town in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, are using technology of the kind they use in New York. And so fundamentally, you have to look at India's scale as a very important factor in adoption of technology.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. When it comes to academic research, AI is already making its mark. So from literature review to data analysis. But then what happens to the idea of originality, authorship, even peer review for that matter? Are we as a community prepared to rethink these long-held concepts?
Well, you have to ask what is new, what is novel. I would tend to believe that in research, use of AI, ChatGPT, etc., are inevitable. And you cannot, because it's like ease of doing business. Once one's got a Western toilet, you don't use an Indian toilet anymore. Just the convenience of it. What you sacrifice in the process, your muscular agility, your all of this is another question, but ease of usage. But then you have to see that you have to improve upon the algorithmic orientation of AI. See, you look at several research papers, they look more or less alike now because of usage of AI. So the asymmetries that you used to see among research papers is not visible anymore. IIT PhDs are using algorithms by the dozen, and when I recruit them, I find that their ability to define even fundamental concepts have been compromised seriously because they're giving one-size-fits-all answers to questions. And so if you look at the convergence and loss of creative quotient in the kind of research that we're seeing is really alarming. And institutions have to future-proof their research ethos by prioritizing insights over just output. You can have tons of output, but where is the insight that comes from irreverent questions that have not been asked by an algorithm? This is something that you have to really examine in the light of evidences that I'm seeing right now.
Got it. And then that brings us to the ethical and philosophical lens, areas where your writing and leadership coaching really stands out. What are the big questions educators and researchers need to start asking as AI becomes more embedded in scholarship?
See, wisdom must temper the intelligence. What is intelligence? Intelligence is the ability to look at a phenomenon in as many different ways as possible. Just because I have 100 ways of looking at it doesn't mean wisdom tells me what I should be doing and what I should not be doing. And so, with the ability to take that data, information, a variety of algorithmic views of the world, and then come to a conclusion as to what is the most appropriate thing to do is wisdom. See, data is simple. It's raining is data. It is raining in Kozhikode is information. I have to have an umbrella when I go out in Kozhikode is wisdom. Now, how are you going to use that data, which has now become information because of AI? How are we going to use it is what constitutes wisdom. And I think we must be anchored in humanistic ethics, especially in academia, to decide what we will accept or what we will not accept. That discernment. Suppose somebody creates an AI-based paper, whose authorship is it? Does the credit go to AI or to the author? How do you discriminate? So the ability to discern, to discriminate from the human perspective is very, very critical. I think that's where wisdom comes in, to see what is not acceptable to us. And see, there are different ways of using AI to crack systems. So you can predict voter behavior, you can figure out everything about your personal life in a jiffy. But would you want to do that? So that's where wisdom steps in, and you have to have the discernment, which unfortunately is getting more and more precious by the day, because that is what people are going to pay you for, not for your research output, but how your research has impacted practice in ways that was not possible before. So this is going to be very, very critical.
Specific to your institute, what are some of the ways you're actively integrating AI into teaching, learning, or even research? And what has been the response from faculty and students?
You see, the response has been mixed and it's varied. We have launched an AI-focused elective to an interdisciplinary modules across the MBA executive programs. I have a program called Mindfulness in the Age of AI. And so I'm sensing that the more and more the cause-effect relationship, in fact, the rational aspect of the mind is taken care by AI. What would remain for us to do would be fundamentally that which cannot be broken down into cause and effect, which is intuitive understanding of things, grasping it at the emotional level. Emotions is data. And so all of these will come to the fore in teaching learning. And I think we are doing a bit to understand what will be when AI takes over most of the functionalities of that can be broken in cause and effect relationship and do it cheaper, faster, better. What are you going to be left with to do? And so that's the question that I'm asking the institution to consider. And I think we are moving in a direction where such skills as empathy, these are being brought back. One aspect of AI is buddhi vritti. Buddhi vritti is use of the intellect. There's a corresponding value called hridaya vritti, which is culture of the heart, which is yet not co-opted by the algorithms. And so we have to get there. Hridaya vritti means the heart has a computational capability that we have ignored so far. The heart is able to recognize not the biological heart, but the heart as a center of emotions. So those are very, very critical aspects of the human skill set that we are now looking at incorporating in our curriculum. So it's not necessarily a surfeit of AI. It's about what is left when AI takes over. Many of these aspects is what our concern is right now.
Speaking of the faculty, how do you see their roles evolving in this new landscape? What new skills or mindsets or even attitudes will educators need to stay relevant and be impactful?
Yeah, the faculty has evolved from knowledge transmitters to learning architects. What I mean is that you are moving from one aspect of, there are four things any business school does. One is knowledge creation, then there's knowledge dissemination. then knowledge accreditation, and knowledge monetization. Of the four, knowledge creation is what needs primary focus. So faculty should be focused not so much on the transmission of it, but creation of it. The emphasis shifts from what to teach to how to mentor, to question, to coach. So I have converted all my training programs into coaching programs because I feel training is going to be redundant. You train dogs, you don't train people anymore. And so you coach people. New skill sets, including AI fluency, emotional intelligence, systems thinking, ethical leadership. The mindset shift is from control to co-creation. And so you have to look at a teacher's role as not as the sage on the stage controlling a class, but essentially nudging by the side to see how you can ask the rare prompts and rare questions which will change the nature of the conversation, the discussion. And so this is some of the changing roles of faculty going forward.
Got it. Absolutely. And I think you've covered this a little bit, Professor, in terms of, the so-called tension between embracing the future and preserving the human core of education. But how do you as a leader, still strike that balance? How do you kind of, reiterate that?
The tension is, there is a structural tension, as I said, between the current reality and the future. But I'm not a building, I'm a human being. So I don't experience structural tension. I experience the same tension in the form of emotions. And in the form of emotions, what I tend to do is follow the path of least resistance. So right now, the path of least resistance is my default modes of asking questions, my default mode of understanding something. But if my path of least resistance moves to using technology, I become more fluent in using technology, and that then becomes a path of least resistance. And so what happens is technology seamlessly blends in with my natural talent, my natural intelligence, and I can produce something that would be of remarkable value. So thinking of technology as alien, if I think of it as an ally, it makes sense for me because then I can use AI to shorten the time to produce a book. I write a book a year. Now I can write one in 6 months because all the editorial alignment work for which I used to spend lots of time is now available to me, right? So all I need is an idea which I can amplify, and then it can be dressed up in any which way the publisher wants it and the reader wants to read. So dressing up part is taken up. So your core is to design the cloth, the fabric, and dressing up can be done by technology that's far more capable of doing it. So you must know what are those complementarities that are available to you, and that's where value comes.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you've covered some bits of this in your responses to the previous questions, Professor, which is adaptability, acceptance, path of least resistance. But still, change management in academia is never easy. I mean, if I look at the other side where we work closely with publishers and a lot of these societies, there is a lot of conversation around things like AI, but the actual implementation takes its own time. From your perspective, again, going back to the institutions, the institutional heads dealing with both disruption and inertia, what advice would you offer?
Well, you see, disruption is not just technological, it is deeply cultural. And we have to manage fear and inertia with a lot of empathy because there will be a lot of senior faculty who would not gravitate easily. You have to build trust capital before pushing reform. We have to focus on small, visible wins. A new AI tool adopted in one classroom can be seed of a broader change. So you start with a little oasis in a desert. You don't start transforming the desert overnight. It can't be done. You lead with curiosity, not control. And so these are some of the shifts that in the leadership role you have to undertake. When anything is being adopted, anything is thrust on your community, the first form of resistance is called I don't know enough information. I don't have enough information. The second level of resistance, I know enough, but I don't like it enough. So emotion. Third form of resistance is I know enough, I also like it enough, but I don't like you. So as long as you're telling me, I don't trust you. And so you have to establish trust as the primary driver of adaptation. And so I think we have to get those small wins through trust, and then the bigger thing comes as a result.
Absolutely. In your experience, you've worked closely with institutions globally, Professor, so Harvard, INSEAD, IMD. what best practices or frameworks from your global experience can Indian institutions adopt to harness AI responsibly?
Well, you'll be surprised. Indian institutions are a lot more global than Western ones. You will see in Harvard people still using chalk and blackboard. And in and so the point is, what is global, what is east, what is west. Technology has eradicated many of those barriers. Nevertheless, good institutions have adopted AI at the strategic level. They use AI in their governance frameworks to ensure responsible use, which we haven't yet. They're collaborating with tech partners for sandbox innovation labs. They're promoting interdisciplinary research in a big way, combining AI with sociology, philosophy, public policy. They are focused on contextual innovation, not just copy paste. But you have to adopt this innovation wisely. See, there's a lot of AI-driven research that's happening in the frame of SMEs innovation. I was in England recently. In fact, I'm leading a bunch of British school deans into India in September, and for 60 odd deans directors from Indian institutions and 40 from England. So there would be mixing and matching of what's happening in multiple places. And so what's happening in India can also be adopted on a global scale because we are very smart with technology. So there's lots to learn from global next practices. The best practices are no longer best because they've been sort of old. So global next practices are what I'm curious about. Best are available to us yet. I mean, at the IIMs, of course, we know what's happening out there.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Professor. Your books, and I'm very curious about it. Karma Sutras, Krishna, the Seventh Sense. And I also see in the background the new one, which is 1 Minute Wisdom. And it was from a lot of Indian philosophical thought. And so just maybe two parts to the question, Professor. One is, how did the whole evolution of these books happen? And second is that, do you see any parallels between these ancient frameworks and brilliant? Yeah, I'm very curious. I'm going to get a copy. And so do you see any parallels between these ancient frameworks and today's AI-led systems? And is there a deeper wisdom that we may apply? And of course, first part of the question, Professor, is how did the evolution of these books happen? I mean,
the thing is that we go around the world and come back to the place from where we started and we discover it for the first time. And so the so-called past and the future, the so-called past and the future are only mental models. They have very little to do with reality. We have a respect for the future which the future does not deserve. And we have a disdain for the past which the past deserves still less. Because the past is not, everything that improves in technology with age. Human beings do not necessarily improve with age or years. There are lots of stuff we've lost in the way. Look at human memory. Look at our ability to read nature's manuscript. People could predict rains way before rain started. And, they had those sensory capabilities. People will smell something foul much better than today's sanitized world. And so we have lost a lot. And so if you say AI is bringing me back a lot, but what you have lost in the process is that human beings' ability to do the hard work to be able to access nature's law. And that ability to do the hard work is getting diluted significantly because you can now, for me to locate Addis Ababa, I had to really do the hard work of opening the pages of an atlas, figuring out what is Addis Ababa in the whole swarm of names of cities. Today, you just click a button and it appears to you. So what you've gained in time, what you've gained in breadth, you've lost in depth. And so this is something that the ancients had, which we have lost, the depth of perception, the depth to which they could look at life, reflect life and its vicissitudes. We have prolonged life, but we have not made it any better. And so where is the depth that we have lost in breadth was my question. And so my books come from the space of depth, where the breadth is missing. For instance, if you ask me, there's a competitiveness in the air in organizations all over. And then from the depth of perception, you tell them to look 99.99% of our ecosystem is organized in cooperation, not in competition. So if your emphasis is overwhelmingly on competition, you're losing out on some basic core organizing principles. How about that? So once you do this, for instance, a lot of people ask me, young people, how do I get what I desire? I said, you have to first get to the fact that you have to deserve what you desire. So focus on what you deserve. If you focus on desire will follow you like shadow follows light. So there's a fundamental flaw in the way that we have put the cart before the horse. And I think the depth that my work would try to bring is a missing piece in today's world. And I've called this book 1 Minute Wisdom. And the thing is, 1 minute is not 60 seconds. Algorithm will tell you 1 minute is 60 seconds. But my wisdom tells me 1 minute is called a muhurt. Mu means the moment. And rhythm means the cosmic order. So the time-space, billion time-space events that have created this moment is pregnant with billions of times. It's not just 60 seconds. It is a whole infinite, eternal forces of nature that has now crystallized this moment. If you're on that plane that exploded in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, then that Boeing plane, one moment you're tying your seatbelt, and within 30 seconds you're asking existential questions about life and death. So you can see the power of that moment. It is very important that in a minute you can come to this depth of perception. I'm going to also end with a story, something that you might find it interesting. Now, this was the CEO of one of the top big 4 consulting firms, and he resigned at the age of 54 because he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and the doctors told him 3 months to live. So he spent the first month meeting his customers, his all corporate people, settling scores with them, all of that. Next month, he met his friends and he spent quality time with them. Third month, he spent exclusively with his family, and he died on the lap of his wife and with his mother by his side. And he wrote a piece before he died, and he said, I'm lucky that I have just 3 months to live because every moment mattered. And I think you have to get to the power of that moment, which is, and with all its depth and verticality, which no algorithm can reach. And the other story that embellishes it is my visit to Japan. I go to a sushi restaurant, look at the menu card, it is so hugely expensive, I feel like getting out. But I have an Indian flag on my jacket, so in reference to my country, I stay put. And I get 10-course sushi meal, starting with seaweeds, followed by octopus. Of the 10, I could eat only 5. But when I get the bill, I'm surprised that it is 1/8 of the actual menu bill. So I asked the lady serving, why did you charge me so less? I'm very happy, but why did you charge me so less? Is there an error in the billing? She said, no, I was observing while you're eating. I billed you not for what you ordered, but what you enjoyed. Which algorithm can get you there? And so, you have to explore wisdom in these small pockets of experiences. And I put this together. You can read each chapter within a minute. That's as long it takes to read. But the chapter might stay a lifetime.
Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that, Professor. I mean, I honestly, when you were sharing the stories and I literally had some goosebumps. And not just this book, but I'm very, very curious about the others as well. And it's been, such a privilege to have this conversation. I did have one final question for you. If you, just staying with the topic, if you were to write a new sutra for academic leadership in the age of AI, what would it be?
Explore who am I before you ask what is AI. that would be the priority, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been fantastic. One of my best, episodes having a conversation with you, Professor. Professor Chatterjee, thank you so much for such an insightful and thought-provoking conversation. You've given us a framework not just for how institutions can adopt AI, but how they can do so with grace, wisdom, and a human touch, most importantly. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, do follow Insights Exchange on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're on LinkedIn, feel free to connect and join the conversation. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's discussion. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.